think about it, most of us have spent like thousands of hours of our lives just sitting inside a classroom,
Oh, absolutely. Thousands.
right? Like hauling heavy backpacks around, stressing out over final exams, just counting down the actual minutes until the bell rings.
We have all been there.
Yeah. And school, well, it often feels like this relentless mountain of hard work. It's this highly structured environment that is completely devoid of any actual free
It
time.
really is.
But the very word school originally meant the exact opposite.
Which is just wild.
It is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack the fascinating, surprising, and sometimes totally contradictory history behind these institutions where we have all spent so much of our lives.
We're looking at the entire evolution of schools and universities today.
Exactly. And we are going to look at some amazing historical and sociological sources to do it. But we have to start with incredible irony. Where does the word school actually come from?
So it traces back to the ancient Greek word skoli, and that emerged around the 8th century BC.
Okay.
And the literal translation of that word is leisure or rest. Basically, free time to think.
Free time. I mean, try selling that concept to a teenager who's currently buried under 3 hours of algebra homework.
Good luck with that.
Right. It just feels completely disconnected from how we experience education today.
It really does. But we have to look at the social mechanisms of ancient Greece to, understand why they defined it that way.
Right. The context.
Exactly. In their societies, schooling was explicitly defined as time set aside for mental pursuit and is entirely decoupled from labor.
Wait, meaning you didn't work while you learned?
Yeah, exactly. We had physical work, farming, building, managing an estate, and then totally separate from that, you had schooling.
Oh, wow.
It was a very privileged space where knowledge was explored just for the sake of knowledge.
So the origin of the school was fundamentally about freedom.
Yes, the free thought and the privilege to actually engage in it. It wasn't an obligation or a chore at all.
But, I mean, humanity didn't hold on to that utopian leisure concept for very long.
No, we definitely did not.
Right. If we want to find the first physical institutions that functioned like the schools we might actually recognize today,
Yeah.
we have to look away from those Greek philosophers.
To travel back much further.
Yeah, to ancient Mesopotamia.
Specifically to the Sumerian civilization. So this is operating between roughly 3000 and 2000 BC.
Okay.
And they created these institutions called the Iduba, which translates to tablet house.
Tablet house.
Yeah, and let me tell you, these were absolutely not built for philosophical leisure.
No.
Not at all. They had a remarkably pragmatic, super rigid, and state-driven purpose. They were there to teach the complex art of writing.
Right. Because cuneiform isn't exactly something you just pick up in a weekend.
No, it took years of really rigorous study.
But they weren't teaching writing so people could, compose poetry in their free time.
Right. No, definitely not. The Sumerians had a booming, highly complex agricultural economy.
Okay.
They were moving massive amounts of grain, managing these sprawling trade networks, and collecting taxes.
Oh, taxes. It always comes back to taxes.
Always. So the Adupa was essentially created to train bureaucrats. The state needed people who could keep tax records and manage the logistics of a growing empire.
That dynamic is so interesting because it strips away all the romanticism of education.
It really does.
When you describe the Sumerian tablet house,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like a gathering of enlightened thinkers at all.
No.
It sounds like an ancient coding boot camp or like a mandatory corporate onboarding program.
That is a perfect analogy.
Like they were running a fast track program to just mass produce white collar data entry clerks for the state.
Exactly. And that underlying mechanism establishes a really clear sociological equation that echoes throughout all of history.
Which is what?
Well, as a state expands, its administration gets super complicated. The government suddenly requires massive amounts of written records just to function.
Right. And that need for records creates an entirely new class of people within society, a literate administrative elite.
Oh, I see.
And then that elite class demands permanent institutions to train the next generation and basically sustain their own power.
Wow. So from the very beginning of recorded history, the school was literally a product of bureaucracy and the economy.
It was.
It was just a functional tool built by the state for the state.
And once that incredibly effective blueprint was established, other ancient societies realized they could, mold the concept of education to fit their own specific societal goals.
They customized it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just about training accountants anymore. It became about shaping ideology.
Okay, give me an example.
Take ancient Egypt, for example, roughly 2600 to 30 BC. Their education was deeply, deeply intertwined with religion,
Right.
and it was centered entirely around the temples.
Because in Egypt, writing hieroglyphics, which literally means sacred carvings, by the way, wasn't just a logistical skill, it was an actual religious act. It was. The goal was to train priests and bureaucrats, sure, but the overarching structural purpose was to sustain the state's ideology.
Okay.
The pharaoh was considered a living god, the social hierarchy was framed as divine, and the school's job was to ensure that belief system remained absolute.
So you were learning to read, but more importantly, you were being like inducted into an ideological order.
Precisely.
That is socialization on a massive scale. The state is basically using the classroom to ensure you never question the architecture of society.
Right, they lock it in early.
Which makes total sense for a highly centralized absolute monarchy like Egypt.
Yeah.
But what happens when a state wants to control not just the religion, but the actual like moral fabric and merit of its administrators?
That's when we look at ancient China, particularly from the Zhou dynasty through the era of Confucius.
Okay, how do they do it?
There, the educational mechanism was fundamentally about morality, state administration, and maintaining strict social order. And to achieve this, China introduced something completely revolutionary. They created the first centralized exam system.
Okay, this is the part that really caught my attention in our sources.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's the true ancestor of our modern obsession with standardized testing.
It really is.
How did this ancient exam system actually function?
So it was designed as a vast meritocracy. If you wanted a government job, you had to take these grueling standardized tests based heavily on classic philosophical and moral texts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in theory, a peasant's son could study, pass the exams, and become a really powerful state civil servant, regardless of his family's background or wealth.
Okay, so schools were geared entirely toward preparing students for these high stakes tests.
Exactly. Teaching to the test, essentially.
I mean, I understand why that sounds incredible on paper. The idea of social mobility based purely on your own study habits is super appealing.
Right. Sounds fair.
But looking at the sociological reality, I have to push back on the meritocracy angle.
Go for it.
It sounds like the ultimate mechanism for state control. The state gets to write the test. They decide what merit actually looks like.
That's a very good point.
If merit simply means perfectly memorizing state-approved moral philosophy, then you aren't really creating free, innovative thinkers.
No, you're not.
You're just finding the smartest, most capable people who are willing to conform to your system.
You're building a ladder, yeah, but you are controlling exactly where it leads.
Yeah, the state effectively monopolizes ambition.
Wow, that's exactly it.
You channel all the intellectual energy of an entire generation into reproducing the state's values.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant administrative machine.
It really is.
But, the state doesn't always have to be the driving force behind education.
Right, there are other models.
Exactly. If we look at ancient India, specifically the Vedic period between 1500 and 500 BC, we see an entirely different paradigm.
Okay.
One where the state bureaucracy is largely absent from the educational structure.
Right, they developed the Gurukul system.
Yes, the Gurukul. How did that operate compared to like a Sumerian tablet house or a Chinese exam hall?
Well, in a Gurukul, the physical separation between life and learning just dissolved completely.
I mean,
The student literally went to live in the teacher's home, the guru's home.
oh,
Yeah. It wasn't a bureaucratic training program with some set curriculum of tax codes. It was a holistic life practice.
so they were doing chores too.
Exactly. You chopped wood, you tended the fire, you managed the household, and you studied the sacred Vedas.
Wow.
The focus was heavily on ethics, life skills, and spiritual growth. Education was inseparable from living.
It's just fascinating how distinct these early models are.
They really are so different.
You have the Sumerians crunching numbers, the Chinese standardizing moral tests. And
Yeah.
in India, you are literally living with your mentor, focusing on holistic spiritual living.
Right.
But I mean, these systems developed in relatively isolated pockets of the world.
Initially, yes.
Eventually, traders expand, empires conquer one another, and these different philosophies have to start colliding, right?
Yeah, they do. Which brings us to a crucial and honestly often overlooked period between roughly 200 and 600 AD.
Late antiquity.
Exactly. As classical empires started to fracture and shift around, human knowledge needed a safe harbor. It needed a way to cross newly drawn borders.
Right.
And this created massive intellectual bridges, particularly along the Mesopotamia-Anatolia line.
Yeah. Our sources specifically highlight the schools of Edessa, which is modern day Şanlıurfa and Her.
Yes.
These places sound like ancient cultural blenders. What made them so vital to the survival of education?
They were the ultimate cultural translators. These hubs sat right at the crossroads of empires,
Okay.
and they actively synthesized Roman, Persian, and Christian knowledge.
Oh, wow. All of it together.
Yeah. Scholars there studied Syriac theology, which was a branch of Eastern Christianity that basically served as a massive linguistic and cultural bridge.
Right.
But they didn't just study theology, they actively translated and preserved ancient Greek mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy.
So they were saving the classics.
They were. They took Roman administrative concepts, Persian scientific observations, and Greek logic, and essentially wove them all together.
That is incredible.
Without these hubs, a massive portion of ancient knowledge would have vanished entirely during the chaotic transitions of late antiquity.
And that massive preservation effort carries us right into the Middle Ages, spanning roughly 500 to 1500 AD.
It does.
And this is where the entire vibe of education shifts dramatically again.
Big time.
We go from the state bureaucracy of the Sumerians and the cultural blending of Edessa to an era where everything becomes profoundly religious.
It is a total sacred shift. In Europe, the center of education moves almost entirely behind the walls of monastery and cathedral schools.
Right?
And simultaneously, in the Islamic world, we see the rise of the madrasas,
Yeah.
like the famous Al-Qarawiyyin in 859 and Al-Azhar in 970.
So knowledge is no longer viewed as a pragmatic tool for earthly administration
No, not at all.
or calculating grain taxes. It is considered sacred. It is divine.
Theology becomes the undisputed queen of the sciences. To study the natural world, to study texts, was fundamentally to study divine creation.
Wow.
The institutions were built to explore and protect the Word of God.
You know, treating knowledge as sacred is a massive double-edged sword.
Oh, for sure. How so?
Well, on one hand, you protect what you worship. Framing these texts as divine is probably the main reason they survived the turbulent, violent centuries of the early Middle Ages.
Right. The monks meticulously copying manuscripts literally saved history.
Exactly. But on the other hand, if knowledge is sacred, it means it is heavily gatekept by religious authorities.
Yep, that is the flip side.
The school shifted entirely away from that original Greek ideal of open, free inquiry. It became about the strict, dogmatic transmission of theology.
Right.
You weren't supposed to question the text, you were supposed to memorize it. The authorities controlled who got to read, what they read, and exactly what it meant.
And that tension you just described is the exact pressure point that eventually broke the medieval system wide open.
Oh,
Because if schools are entirely focused on socializing people in religion or reproducing a static worldview, what happens when the society around them suddenly gets vastly more complex?
exactly. As we move through the 11th and 12th centuries, the world is changing fast.
Rapidly.
European cities are growing, trade routes are booming. You suddenly need specialized professionals to make society function.
You don't just need priests anymore.
Right. You need lawyers who can handle complex international trade disputes. You need advanced medical doctors for growing urban populations.
Exactly.
Society outgrew the monastery. It needed a completely new kind of institution.
And that institution is the university. Or looking at its original Latin root, the universitas.
Now, I always assumed the word university meant something like universal knowledge, like a place where you go to study the entire universe.
Most people do think that.
But the etymology is totally different, isn't it?
It is, and understanding the root word changes how you view the entire institution. Universitas didn't mean a physical campus, and it didn't mean universal knowledge. It meant wholeness, or more practically, an institutional union of students and teachers.
Wait,
It was essentially a guild,
that is such a brilliant sociological hack.
isn't it?
Just like bakers, stonemasons, or blacksmiths formed guilds to protect their wages and trade secrets, scholars realized they needed to form a guild to protect themselves.
Precisely. By organizing collectively, students and teachers gained immense leverage.
Right.
If the local religious authority or the local king tried to censor their curriculum or arrest a student, the universitas could just collectively threaten to leave the city.
Oh, wow. They could just walk out.
Yeah, they would pack up, take all their wealthy tuition-paying students with them, and essentially crash the local economy.
That economic leverage created the single most important defining feature of the early university, institutional autonomy. When we look at places like Bologna, which emerged around 1088 specifically for the study of law, or Paris for theology, and the early colleges of Oxford, we see something unprecedented.
And what stands out to you?
For the first time, you have an institution setting its own rules, completely independent of the local church and the state.
Yes.
You also see the invention of the diploma system, the creation of distinct academic faculties, and a clear internal academic hierarchy.
So, a university isn't just a high school for older kids.
So,
It is a fundamentally different sociological entity.
schools historically and even today are essentially about socialization. They teach you the baseline norms, the moral codes, and the basic skills to fit into existing society.
Right.
But universities, from their very inception, were designed for the production of new knowledge and the protection of the people producing it.
The school reproduces society, the university interrogates it,
I love that framing.
and that distinction held strong for centuries. But if we fast forward a bit, the 18th and 19th centuries bring the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, right. Everything changes.
Yeah, it violently reshapes both of these concepts into the systems we live with today.
Because the state looks at a rapidly industrializing economy and realizes it needs a very specific kind of citizen.
It doesn't need millions of independent scholars.
No, it needs millions of compliant factory workers. So the school literally adopts the architecture and the mechanisms of the factory.
It was a very conscious transformation. The modern school adopted mandatory attendance laws to ensure the entire population was
Processed. Wow.
Yeah, they implemented standardized, rigid curriculums. Think about the physical layout.
Desks in rows.
Exactly. Students sit in rows facing a central authority figure. You don't speak unless spoken to.
Right.
And the day is strictly divided by the ringing of bells, which is exactly how a factory shift was managed.
It's a pretty bleak drop from the Greek scholi, isn't it?
It really is.
We went from free time to think to sit down, face forward, and move only when the bell rings.
Yeah, the goal was the mass production of discipline.
You had to condition children from a young age to handle the monotony and rigid hierarchy of industrial labor. It is pure industrial compliance.
Meanwhile, as the schools were becoming factories, the university was undergoing its own massive mutation.
Okay, what happened there?
The key turning point happens in 1810 in Berlin with what we call the Humboldt model.
Humboldt. Okay.
Wilhelm von Humboldt pioneered an institution that successfully fused advanced scientific research with education while fiercely protecting academic freedom.
Right.
Professors weren't just teaching old, dusty texts anymore. They were actively discovering new things in laboratories and bringing those discoveries directly to the lecture hall.
Oh, that makes sense.
This became the blueprint for the modern research university.
But the evolution didn't stop with a few elite researchers in Berlin, did it?
No, definitely not.
Because in the 20th century, higher education opened up to the masses.
Yeah,
The university completely ballooned.
it really did.
It stopped being an enclave for a few hundred aristocrats and mutated into a sociologist now called the multiversity.
The multiversity. It is a sprawling, incredibly complex bureaucratic entity.
Yeah.
It is a city-state of knowledge. It is no longer just a simple guild of students and teachers protecting their rights.
What is it now?
It is a massive machine trying to balance undergraduate education for tens of thousands of people, massive government-funded research operations, sports empires, and increasingly deep corporate and industry partnerships.
Wow. Let's just zoom out for a second and synthesize what this all means for us today.
Okay, let's do it.
On one hand, we have our primary and secondary schools. Structurally, despite many reforms, they are still largely functioning as tools of discipline and socialization.
They get us ready for the workforce.
Right. And depending on funding and geography, they can often end up reproducing the very social inequalities they claim to fix.
And on the other hand, the universities have evolved into massive strategic power centers.
Right.
They hold patents, they drive technological innovation, they partner with the world's largest corporations. They are actively dictating the future direction of the global economy. The university today is a knowledge power nexus.
A knowledge power nexus.
It's a long, long way from a medieval guild of scholars threatening to leave town to protest a bishop.
Just like the modern high school is a long way from the Sumerian tablet house.
Exactly.
So I guess if you listen closely, the echoes of bureaucracy are still ringing pretty loud.
Yeah.
Every time you step onto a campus or into a classroom, you are standing inside layers upon layers of this history.
It's everywhere.
We started with the ancient Greek concept of leisure and free inquiry. We moved through the pragmatic, bureaucratic boot camps of Sumeria. We crossed the intellectual sacred bridges of Edessa, saw the birth of the autonomous universitas in medieval Europe.
All the way to the present.
Exactly. All the way to the highly structured industrial factories of modern schooling and the sprawling multiversities of today.
Once you understand the mechanisms that built these institutions, it completely reframes how you look at a classroom.
It absolutely does. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
I'm ready.
Think about the skills you use every single day, the way you process information, the way you collaborate with others, the way you think about your own success. Were those skills nurtured in a system designed for free thought and leisure?
That's a great question.
Or were they drilled into you by a system fundamentally designed for industrial compliance? As you look at today's massive, sprawling multiversities, you really have to wonder, are they actually serving the pursuit of near liberating knowledge? Or have they just become the ultimate corporate partner, producing exactly what the economy demands?
Something to think about.
Keep diving deep and keep questioning the systems around you.